What's going on, guys? It's oh, I just had a voice crack. Give me a sec. What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today we'll be bringing you the part 2 of the Dynasty decisions for this week. You guys would have already seen yesterday's episode. Well, today's going to be the second part of that because we had a ton of interest, a ton of submissions to get featured on Dynasty decisions. Before that, as always, Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I believe we're actually releasing this 2 days after. So instead of yesterday's, it'll be 2 days ago.
Yeah.
But yes, episode 38. Nonetheless, you guys know the drill. If you want to be part of future episodes, you can submit questions to us on Patreon, which is the easiest way to do it and the most preferred way because they get first priority. And if you have other questions and you can't sign up on Patreon, you can hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up in the Discord. Link is in the description for both of those things. And we'll get you on for future episodes. Could be trade questions, could be your whole team. What should I do? Contending, rebuilding, etc. What should I do with my rookie picks? All that is included in Dynasty Decisions. Any decision relating to Dynasty, we will answer for you.
Amen. We got to trademark that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that being said, before we get into the first team, as always, we're going to hit that damn intro. So yeah, we're going to get into the first team. That's going to be Scott from over on Patreon. And you guys can see this is a 10-team half PPR league with 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends. So he basically mentions before obviously submitting his team that he recently traded Herbert for a nice haul because he desperately needed assets. Can you evaluate the trade that he made and let me know what your advice is for using my draft picks this year? And also outlines that his picks this year are as follows: the 107, the 108, the 205, the 207, and the 301. So when looking at this team, when looking at, the overall structure, the overall layout, what immediately sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, he said he needed a lot of assets because he didn't have a whole lot, which is why he made the Herbert trade. And I mean, it makes sense. In a 2-quarterback league, he really only had, Justin Herbert to build around. The one thing I will say is, like, when you're trading a superstar like Justin Herbert, I probably would have wanted a little bit more. And we can kind of just get right into the trade right now. You get Zach Wilson, who we're both, excited about, 107, 108, and he says 15, which I'm assuming is his 205 because it's a 10-team league.
Yep.
I personally, to move off of Justin Herbert, I need a lot, man. Like, I need, in a 2-quarterback league, Justin Herbert is a lot of value. So I probably would have needed higher first-round picks. If you got Zach Wilson, the 102 and the 105 and 205, that might be a little bit more fair, in my opinion.
Yeah, or if you substituted out the 205 for a projected mid-2023 first, I thought that would have been a little more appropriate. Obviously, again, we're higher on Zach Wilson, so it's not as, big of a loss as some content creators might say. But either way, yeah, if I'm moving Herbert, I mean, he's locked and loaded value insulation-wise as a top 3 overall asset in Superflex. I mean, this is a 2-quarterback, so, I mean, can't get much higher than that already, but it just kind of goes to show that the value would be even more. So I would have rather, the first round pick opposed to the 15th. But I mean, the trade is made. You still got a bunch of young, quality, appreciating assets in this deal as well. And I mean, Zach Wilson, if he ends up being a top 10 quarterback by this time next year, you're not going to be too mad about it.
Yeah, for sure. And he said his first in 2023, and this is why I kind of lean towards more of keeping Herbert. He said his first in 2023 will lend itself to being the 101, which, again, if you're going to get another 101 caliber quarterback to fill out this quarterback core, then having, Stroud and Herbert versus Wilson and Herbert, plus, whatever receivers you get at 107, 108, to me, it's just a more appealing way of rebuilding because then you're getting those stud locked and loaded assets going forward. So he basically says, what should I do with my first and second round picks this year? 107, 108, 205, 207, and 301 overall. So overall, looking at his team, it looks like he's got pretty good receivers. He's got Higgins, Devontae Smith, Michael Pittman Jr., Rashad Bateman. Nothing really at running back, not a lot at quarterback, and not a lot at tight end. So where are you looking with these picks here?
I mean, as I'll always say, your draft picks are not to fill out your starting lineup. If 107, you're staring down, Jameson Williams versus a 3rd round Isaiah Spiller. Like, take the 1st round draft capital wide receiver at this point. If you're at that 205, let's just say, and you're looking at, best receiver available, let's just say at that point, let's shoot. I doubt Sky Moore's going to make it there, but I mean,
might be David Bell or something like that.
David Bell. I mean, maybe Pickens falls, like that type of range type of receiver versus, a 4th, 5th round running back. Clearly you go wide receiver. So overall, for the most part, the best player available at each of those picks should most likely be a wide receiver. Again, I wouldn't also be opposed to, at that 205, getting a guy like Desmond Ridder, getting a guy like Matt Corral, pending their draft capital, if they made it there, like that would be the direction I would be looking for. But ultimately here, the main philosophy, especially when you're in a productive struggle the way you are in, just keep collecting talent, man. Keep building it out. Like, who cares? I mean, you have Higgins, Pittman, Smith, Bateman. Like, you clearly have a good, young, appreciating wide receiver core. But man, if you have to add 3, 4, 5 receivers, you name it, like just build out the depth, baby. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd be looking to do for sure is that 107, 108. If Pickett, if Ridder, if some of these
First round
quarterbacks get
capital.
good draft capital, you
Yeah.
could either A, take them if you like those guys, or B, try and trade that prospect away to a opposing team that needs a quarterback, because it's a 2 quarterback league. I'm sure everybody's really high on quarterbacks, and in a 2 tight end league too. I don't know if anybody's gonna be taking McBride at 108, but like if that's somehow where he's going, because that's what your league market is dictating, then again, continue to stack capital next year, because I mean, you don't have a lot of capital next year. You just have your first round pick, which you expect to be very high. If you can acquire some more first round capital in 2023's class, that would be something I would be looking to do. But it looks like you're going to be in this one for a couple years for sure.
For sure. And the one thing I will add too is, like if Desmond Ridder goes, 20th overall to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I actually tweeted this out today, but it was basically a Ryan McDowell tweet that he said, if you could know the draft capital and landing spot for any of these oncoming rookies, who would it be? I mean, the answer to me is simple. It's any of those quarterbacks. If any of those quarterbacks, let's name Desmond Ridder right now in particular. Like if Desmond Ridder goes 20th overall, lands in a situation like Pittsburgh, he's probably worth that 107. I'm going to be completely honest. From athletic profile, from expected draft capital, from insulation, in terms of being in that type of franchise that we know has been competent in the past and will continue to be competent. Like Desmond Ridder's worth the 107 if he's on the Steelers at 20th overall.
Yeah, he definitely is. And if you don't want to take him there, then I'm sure someone in your league will want to, and you can probably get their 2023 first and maybe even more on top of that. So let's move on to the next patron team, which is Ernest. He has a number of trades that he made here. So he just wants us to review his trades by the looks of it. He has a trade that he made at the deadline last year. He sent away Tom Brady, Cortland Sutton, and the 306, and in exchange got DJ Moore, the 107, and Jerick McKinnon, who he dropped a few weeks later. So
Beautiful.
Just to throw in Jerick McKinnon. But either way, had Brady retired, this would have looked like an absolute fleece. But either way, even with Brady back, this is a phenomenal move. He basically says the main reason why he did this was that he wanted to cash in on Brady before it was too late, and he needed a young stud wide receiver with Ridley out for the year.
Well, I mean, this is the definition of cashing in. I mean, realistically, you got the 2 best assets in the deal, in my opinion. Like, yes, even in a super flex, 2 quarterback league, whatever you name it, like a 44-year-old Tom Brady is not more valuable than DJ Moore, is not more valuable than the 107. And I mean, if we're comparing Cortland Sutton right there, I mean, Cortland Sutton
probably the 107 is exactly how I'd value him.
Yeah, maybe. Like I would probably rather slightly the 107 at this point.
Cortland Sutton in the 3-6 is the 107.
Yeah, let's just say that. So I mean, realistically, you got DJ Moore for Tom Brady.
Yeah. Which is exactly a woodshed type of deal. So he says his next trade here, an offseason trade that he made, so probably shortly after the season, he sent away Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brevin Jordan, his 106, his 206, and his 2023 first. Now, he didn't actually send his roster, I don't think, or he did send his roster. So we do have a team that is, pretty well stocked up to like be competitive, but probably not like a favorite in his league. So that 106 or that first next year, probably mid to late, if I had to guess. But in exchange for that, he got Trey Lance, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Ernest Johnson, and Hunter Long. So looking at the main pieces of this deal, how do you value? Let's start with Trey Lance because he's the most valuable guy in this trade. How do we balance out his value versus what he gave up?
If I'm gonna be completely honest, we're probably looking at
106 in the first. Is that equal to Trey Lance for you?
Well, I mean, I was gonna say personally, like every part of that package he sent, apart from Amon-Ra, would probably be Lance for me, like at least.
So
like
Brevin Jordan, the 106, 206, and his 2023 first. I don't even know if I'd give up Lance for that that package. So yeah,
that's what I mean.
Either way, I think when you added Dobbins and
and
Edwards as his backup and some other pieces there,
yeah,
I think you did a good job here. He said he needed another quarterback and he wanted him to be younger. I think that's a great move. Now you have Joe Burrow and Trey Lance, and you guys can see the team on the screen there as well.
And I'll quickly make a claim. In my opinion, like, can you contextually overpay for quarterbacks? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day here, as we know, top-level elite ceiling quarterbacks are currency in Dynasty. Like, if you have one of those pieces, I mean, and I think Trey Lance can end up developing into the next, Herbert, Allen, Mahomes level type of quarterback again. Real life, maybe not, but from a fantasy perspective, top 3 value or draft installation with elite Konami codability. Like, range of outcomes, he can be, Kyler, Lamar, Mahomes, Herbert, etc. You name it. So the fact that you're getting that without having to completely overpay, which is usually what you see when you see these quarterbacks exchanged, like, absolutely love your side here. Like, we could be looking at Trey Lance next year as a locked and loaded top 7 startup pick.
And even now, he's a top 15 pick.
Yeah.
So you're already getting that value back if you wanted to
Absolutely.
move off of Trey Lance even as well. So another offseason deal that he made, he sent away Nick Chubb, gets Brandon Cooks in the 112. Great move.
Perfect.
Great
Great
move.
move. Yeah.
Nick Chubb for the 112, I think is probably fair value. I probably would prefer Nick Chubb if I'm a contender, prefer the 112 if I'm rebuilding. But he needed another wide receiver, and I think Brandon Cooks is just such a good target to go get if you're looking for a win now type of receiver, because Brandon Cooks is a guy that you can probably get for an early to mid second right now if you're a contender, and Brandon Cooks is going to give you a lot of value in the 2 seasons or whatever that he re-signed with the Houston Texans. You got he said he needed another wide receiver. The reason that he did it, had depth at running back with Taylor and Akers and Dobbins, so he didn't really need Nick Chubb anymore. And then obviously there's a bonus of you getting younger at that position as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. You already have insane depth at running back here with Taylor, Akers, and Dobbins. You need another wide receiver, and I mean, we know Brandon Cooks, when he's healthy, he's at minimum a top 25 to 30 at minimum redraft wide receiver. So
I would say redraft wise, that's probably the range he's going to fit into.
So you're getting that instant production. You're moving off a 27-year-old running back with pass game limitations, and also getting the 112 to insulate some youth into your team. Like, no brainer move. Absolutely love this deal for you. And overall, he kind of gives us the outline. But in 2022, he has the 17, 112, and the 406, and then his picks next year has all of them apart from his 2023 first, which he moved in that Trey Lance deal.
Yeah, so his questions overall were thoughts on the deals, kind of just gave those. What are his needs remaining? I think basically he's trying to evaluate his own needs. QB3. He said, I need in the following order another wide receiver, because he has DJ Moore and Brandon Cooks, and then a lot of question marks after that with Calvin Ridley's situation up in the air and stuff. Then he also says probably needs a second wide receiver, a third quarterback behind Burrow and Lance, and he needs tight end depth aside from, Fant and Gesicki. Honestly, I don't think tight end depth is really a need for you. I think you're probably fine with those guys. If you wanted to have a high-end tight end, then that'd probably be what I would say. But Fant, Gesicki, Hunter Long, Tommy Tremble, I don't think that's a terrible tight end core. I think you can get by with that. So I would agree that wide receiver and quarterback are your biggest needs. Thankfully, at 107 and 112, you're probably going to get a decent third quarterback or a good wide receiver. So at 107, if you can get, Jameson Williams there or something like that, and then at 112, maybe Matt Corral or Sam Howell or Desmond Ritter sneaks into the back of the first round, or their early second round picks, and they go to a great landing spot, the 112 is more than worth a pick like that as well. So this year, I think you're well set up for what you need for your roster, the strength of the draft. And if you don't have a quarterback available on the board, don't force it. I wouldn't, reach on a quarterback at 112 if nobody's worthy of that pick. If you have to take Jameson Williams and Jahan Dotson 107 and 112, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and I mean, worst case scenario, I mean, realistically, because you have some, I'm not going to say promising, because they're not like promising players, but you have some name value in terms of your depth at running back. Obviously, if Gus Edwards, Ronald Jones, Kenyon Drake, something like that, like if an injury basically ended up happening, obviously with Dobbins you have, or with Edwards you have Dobbins, so that would be a little less. But in terms of Ronald Jones, Kenyon Drake, Ernest Johnson,
you could package a couple of those guys and get a makeshift third quarterback potentially, like Marcus Mariota if you wanted to.
Yeah, or a wide receiver. I think like an underappreciated, older wide receiver that can produce wide receiver 2 type of numbers.
You could probably flip Ernest Johnson right now for like Kenny Golladay and just take the shot on him.
Yeah, I mean something like that. You might have to package me, like a future third or something. But I mean, even if like go get it done with the status of your team. Overall, though, 107, 112, any type of combination, whether you want 2 wide receivers, quarterback and wide receiver, pending value, you name it. You're in a very good position here. So overall, we can move off.
He's got 2 more questions. Let's just speed through these real quick. He says, where do I go at 107 and 112? We kind of said. He said double wide receiver. I would say probably wide receiver is the smart move. He said, do I grab McBride at 112? I don't think McBride moves the needle enough as a prospect to go over Fant or Gesicki, so I probably wouldn't. Quarterback at 112 is more likely where I'm going, and then basically any other advice. So we talked about his team for quite a while, so let's move on to the next one here. Big Al, he reached out to you, so I'll let you read off his team.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just quickly read the message that I got. Big shout out, Big Al was in our redraft league this past season. He says, hey, Danny, I made a couple trades this offseason since the last time I submitted for Dynasty Decisions. I have them in the league rules in the Excel sheet. Obviously, he mentions that. So he says here that the question he has is what to do to get a better wide receiver 3 and what to do with his 102. A trade that I am in the talks with is Knox and DK to the Josh Allen owner for Kittle and possibly a first rounder. So that may be something I'm looking for. Hopefully, I can get my team on DD soon. So, in terms of that trade, you would be sending Knox and DK to the Josh Allen owner in exchange for Kittle and a first. Like, I am taking that. I'm taking that straight up. I mean, realistically, Knox, he is very, very nerve-wracking to say the least if you have him as a dynasty asset, because he made a lot of his money last year, obviously with a super high touchdown rate as opposed to elite type of volume. So I do think he's one of the bigger sells in dynasty right now. If you can move off of Knox to get a guy like Kittle, obviously losing DK hurts, but realistically, I mean, the 2023 first is already going to supplement value there, because I mean, realistically, if we're looking at it, Kittle on a first from a pure value installation standpoint is ahead of Knox and DK in my opinion. So overall, like, I would prefer the Kittle on first side.
Yeah, I mean DK is worth a lot to me, so I don't want to say it's like
I love DK, but like, yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Any like middling tier tight end like Knox is pretty much always going to be a big time risk to acquire in Dynasty. What I'm more so looking to do most of the time is predict that guy for the next season rather than buy last year's production, which what we got from Dawson Knox. I would rather take the risks on Cole Kmet and Irv Smith and Noah Fant and guys like that who haven't shown that yet, and grab a couple of those guys for a cheaper price, then go out and acquire a Dawson Knox or a Dalton Schultz or somebody who did it last year that I'm hoping can continue to do it, because I think it's less likely that they continue that rather than me being able to predict a couple guys to do it what Dawson Knox did this past year.
The one thing I will also say is I notice on the team you have Debo. Maybe that person values Debo higher. Maybe you can get Kittle a first and maybe an early second if you change DK into Debo. And at that point, I mean, they're in the same tier for me. If you can extract even that little bit of value on the Kittle side, like, I would be interested in seeing what I can get for that.
Right. Yeah, that's not a bad move either. He basically said, I don't know if we talked about his league rules, but it's a 10-team super flex. It's like weighted PPR, so half PPR for running backs, full PPR for wide receivers, and a tight end premium. So in a tight end premium, you got George Kittle's very, very valuable in that kind of format. So you love to see that. He also has some other trades that we can talk about real quick. He has some defensive players in this, so we'll try our best to talk about these with DeForest Buckner and Azeez Al-Shaair. Like, I don't even know who that is. Like, I've heard the name, but I don't even really know who that is. And then you get Brandon Cooks out of this deal. I don't know how much DeForest Buckner is worth in this kind of format, but Brandon Cooks, I think, is probably worth that package.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up actually giving the Cook side, but like either way, like I don't have much to comment on here, because who knows, maybe DeForest Buckner is the best IDL in your league. I mean, other than Aaron Donald, obviously. So I don't know relative defensive value, but it looks pretty fair contextually.
Oh, he got the Buckner side. Yeah, maybe Buckner's worth that. I have no idea. So let's just like move off of this because we don't know what we're talking about.
The next deal, like,
so you got Deebo Samuel and the 102 for Devontae Adams. Yeah, like I think you definitely took care of business there. Deebo Samuel versus Devontae Adams is a conversation straight up. Like, most people I would say would probably rather have Deebo Samuel. So
I think I've had one spot higher. Like,
yeah, like they're right in the same area for me. So the fact that you get a premium draft pick like the 102 on top of it is definitely good news. And you have a chance to now add Malik Willis to your team, or you want to go shop that pick, or you want to just take a running back or wide receiver with that pick, then you could definitely do something like that.
Look at the draft question. Look who is expected to be at that 102. Take a look.
Do you see it? I see if Breece goes
bottom of the screen.
Yeah, if Breece goes 101, do I get Malik as my QB3 or London there?
It's probably going to be Breece at the 102, but should I pass to get London? So basically, he's saying he expects Willis to go 1. Breece should be available.
No, if you get Breece, you take Breece. That's take Breece. You don't take London over Breece. As much as I like London and he has a higher grade for me, like Breece has, it's a top 50 draft capital running back who's like a second round talent in this draft who's going to get a big workload. So I'm going to take the running back there. I mean, especially with your team, you can compete with this team. So I would definitely add Breece Hall to that. Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, and Breece Hall can carry this team, let alone you have Justin Herbert and Aaron Rodgers and Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and all these dudes. So, that'd be what I'd be looking to do.
Yeah, and he does say if Breece does go to 101, he said he expects Breece to be there at 102, but if he goes 101, I mean, to me, it's a top 2 tier. Like if Malik Willis gets the requisite draft capital, like especially because you have Rodgers, who's an aging quarterback, getting
Yeah.
another young upside type of quarterback 3 to pair with Herbert for the long term is the direction I would go.
Yeah, and if you don't take Willis, I'm probably going to trade that pick. Like that's
Yeah,
the 2
100%.
directions I'm going. I'm either taking Willis or I'm probably going to trade down if I need to, or trade for a future pick or something like that. So let's move off of Big Al's team.
One final thing. The final thing he says is, if I am looking for a package for 102, what should I be looking to deal? If you can get, a package, you mentioned you're not 100% sold on Malik because you mentioned London as potentially being an option there. If you can trade down to 105, pick up a 2023 first, which may be available, especially
I'd probably be looking for another wide receiver in a deal if you can, because you have Debo and Metcalf, but like not a whole lot else after that. So if you can get the 105 and Brandon Cooks, or the 105 and a receiver that's really going to help you. I guess you traded away Brandon Cooks, so maybe you're not looking for him, but like a receiver that's going to help you. So let's say you can get what'd you say?
Allen Robinson.
Yeah. If you can get the 105 and Allen Robinson for the 102 and get yourself a young wide receiver like Garrett Wilson or Drake London or Treylon Burks, and add another wide receiver that's going to help you this year, then I think that's a great move.
Yeah, and I think you could probably even get even more than A-Rob, the 105 for that 102.
Yeah, maybe somebody's not very high on Hollywood Brown or Amon-Ra St. Brown or somebody like that, and then you can just take them to the woodshed, basically, if you get a deal like that for the 102.
Absolutely. So as Corey alluded to, we can move on to the next team, and that's going to be from Judoyo. So he says here, some advice I might like mostly includes what to do at 103 and 105, and he kind of mentions what his current plan is. So he mentions his current plan is Burks or London at the 103, and then at 105, picking between, Wilson, Walker, a guy like that. So what are your thoughts on the team? We'll talk about that draft strategy and kind of outline some of the deals he made as well.
Yeah, so looking at his team, you guys can see he has Herbert and Mac Jones as his quarterbacks. He's got Kamara, Penny, not much else, elite talent-wise at running back. Then you got Deontay Johnson, Godwin, Marquise Brown, Adam Thielen, et cetera, at wide receiver, Darren Waller at tight end, and then you have picks 103, 105, like you said, 206, and then an earlier second in 2023, but it doesn't look like he has his first-round pick at that point. Doesn't have his first-round pick in 2024 as well. So let's start with the trades real quick, and then we'll go back to the draft pick questions. He made a couple trades here. The first one, he received Deontay Johnson 105 and 106 in exchange for Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams and a 2023 second. So what are your thoughts on that move there?
Yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me. Deontay Johnson and Devontae Adams aren't really too far off in Dynasty, in my opinion. Like, realistically here,
Deontay the 106 for Devontae Adams in the second probably is pretty fair value, I would say. And I would probably lean the Deontay side there.
Yeah, like I would probably lean the Deontay side, but I mean, realistically, if we want to contextualize it, let's just say that's fair value. And then I would rather the 105 over Derrick Henry. I understand everybody's going to come in the comments and be like, oh, how are you fading the king? I don't like 28-year-old running backs coming off of severe lower body issues. Like,
with,
yeah,
1,700 career touches or whatever too.
Yeah, so. Give me the 105. Give me a young up and coming insulated wide receiver that's going to go in the first round of the draft.
Yeah, I agree. And then let's get to the second trade. He gets the 103 and an early second in exchange for Chase Claypool, the 106, and a 2023 third. So you basically trade up from the 106 to the 103 and give up Chase Claypool in the process, but you get a better, second round, which is going to be, early, and you give up a third in exchange for that. So I think the 106 versus the 103, it depends on who's on the board. It might not be a huge difference in that pick. You might be looking at, the number one wide receiver in the class versus, a tier 2 wide receiver in the class, or best case scenario, Wilson or Burks or London falls to 106. So it really all is going to depend on who's on the board for you there, but I don't mind this trade at all.
I mean, realistically here, you're giving yourself an outside shot at Malik or Brees. So
the
fact that, I mean, if we're equating this deal, I would say you want to equate Claypool to the early second. I think that'd probably be relatively appropriate. Early second, 2023 for Claypool. Let's just say that evens it out. So if I only have to give up a 2023 third to at least give myself a chance at Malik or Brees, like I'm doing it. And the worst case scenario, oh, boo-hoo.
I get if Burks goes to Green Bay or Kansas City, like he's going to be the 103 or potentially the 102 or 101 for some people. And then you have a real chance at those other guys.
I mean, the downside risk there, ooh, boo-hoo, I lost a third. Big deal. Like, if you are a dynasty manager and losing a third is realistically going to affect your long-term standing in the league, like, you got
even
more
if you're the
problems
highest on Chase Claypool that you can be, he's probably like a late first value at most for most people.
Yeah, max. So overall, he also mentions here at that 103 and the 105 where he should be looking. Well, We
I
kind
think
of
I agree
talked
with
about
his
it, but
assessment. I think you should probably go with, Garrett Wilson or sorry, London or Burks at 103, whatever one you value most. And again, if one of Brees or Malik Willis falls because one of those guys got like an elite landing spot or something, then by all means go with the running back or the quarterback or the best available wide receiver. So I think that's, you're pretty straight up there. And then at 105, Garrett Wilson or Kenneth Walker, I think is also fine. If you want to go with the running back to fill
yeah,
out your running back core, by all means, but I don't think I would force it. I personally would take Garrett Wilson, but I have no, complaints with you if you want to go with Kenneth Walker because you have
yeah,
a, pretty good wide receiver core and you need some running back help.
no issues there. And I mean, in terms of looking at that team at that 206, like you have your tight end situation settled out. Obviously, it's going to depend on the quarterback texture because I do think that the top 5 guys should relatively be gone by then. So it should be a wide receiver there. I mean, realistically, here you have a pretty solid overall wide receiver core. I mean, adding a Pickens, a Watson, whoever's going to be available at that 206, like no qualms there whatsoever. Just keep adding talent.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that at the 105, do you consider, Sam Howell or something if he goes like 20th overall to the Steelers?
It would have to depend on what happened around him too, in
Yeah,
my
that's
opinion.
true. That's fair. Anyway, that was just my only thing that I had
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
We can move off of Judoyo's team. Let's get to JHeebs team.
Yep.
Basically wants to know what we thought of his trade. Do you think his team is young enough to survive having no picks until 2024? And is his team good enough, more importantly, to win it all? For the first thing I will say is when you have no picks, you don't really have a choice. You have to try and win.
Yeah.
Because you're going to tank somebody else's pick. You're not
Yeah.
tanking your own pick at that point.
Well,
So,
to me, this team can definitely win.
yeah, definitely good enough to compete. You guys can see he has his team here. Burrow, Stafford, and Zach Wilson as super flex. Definitely a good quarterback core there. You got Javonte Williams, Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, and some others there. Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore, and some others there. Calvin Ridley and Gallup, most notably. And then you got T.J. Hawkinson at tight end. But again, you don't have your first, second, or third, or any of your picks in the next 2 drafts. You don't really have a choice but to compete. But I do think you can. I do think this is a team that is, like he mentions, is this team young enough to survive until having no picks in 2024? The only piece that you really have to worry about not being relevant, or pieces, I guess, would be Stafford and Devontae Adams. Everybody else should be, Chase and Smith and Elijah Moore and Javonte Williams and Gibson and Burrow and Wilson. They should all be still in their prime. Same with Hawkinson. He's a tight end. We don't expect him to fall off at age 27 or 28. So I think you're well set up to win now, and you should still be in okay shape by 2024.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the team's completely settled here. I mean, like you have a contending team. Don't worry about it. Just go try to win the next 2 years because I mean you have really no other choice with no draft capital. But overall, I mean, he also lists a trade here that he actually asked me about in the DMs, and I absolutely love the side he gave here. Like I listen, I get it. Like losing that first and third is going to affect your long term draft capital. But I mean, Chase is nearly unobtainable in Dynasty, and I personally think like realistically AJB and those 2 picks at minimum are Chase. And even if I had Chase, I don't even know if I'd take that. Like that is the
Yeah,
type of insulation you get with Chase. So Chase, I mean, if we're equating the deal, Chase would be equal to AJB, those 2 picks. And if we're looking at Lance and Kittle versus Burrow and Hawk, like that's a wash to me. And
yeah, exactly. It's tough because like you got somebody to trade the Burrow and Chase stack, which is
yeah,
not going to be easy to do if you try and inquire about that. So I probably would have, like, you're buying it high, which is something that is a little
I don't
sketchy
even
to
think
do.
that's
But
high, man. I
yeah,
don't.
I don't know, man. I think I prefer the other side of the trade. Like, I love AJ Brown. I love George Kittle. I love
It's
Trey
a
Lance.
big
I think
difference between Brown and Chase for me, brother. Like
there's
I
a
love
difference.
Brown.
There's definitely a sizable difference. I think it's probably like AJ Brown in the first is the difference between Chase and AJ Brown for me. But I think there is a pretty sizable difference between Kittle and Hawkinson, and Lance and Burrow is relatively close for me. But either way, I do think acquiring that huge Burrow and
Yeah.
Chase stack is going to be. It's like acquiring the Tyreek Hill and Mahomes stack in 2018,
Yeah,
probably. So
like
like you're going to be in good shape there.
you are realistically like for what they did last year in Chase's rookie year, Burrow's second year, like imagine trying to go buy the Mahomes Tyreek stack in 2019.
Yeah, that's
Like
what I just
that
said.
I know no, but that was after they
Oh
exploded.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah. I
we
know what you
get
mean.
a second year of Burrow and Chase doing this, like we could be looking at Burrow and Chase both. I mean, right now they're both top 10 overall picks in Superflex, but we could be looking at them as maybe, top 7 guys. Like I could generally see from a market perspective, their values being at that level. And even if like getting both of them in the same deal is very, very tough to do. So overall, I really like your side there personally.
Yeah, that's like the hardest thing to acquire in
Yeah.
Dynasty right now. The only like thing harder is like Kyle Pitts, pretty much
Yeah.
for most people. So
For real.
let's move on to Tyler's team, the next team here. We got overall thoughts, next steps to take. Pretty simple here. Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston. It is a one quarterback league, so
Yeah.
all you need is Josh Allen there. Then you got Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins, Michael Carter, A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny. Very deep running back core. Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Marquise Brown, OBJ, Antonio Brown, I guess, and then some others. Tight end, you got not a whole lot of tight end. Tyler Higbee is your top guy. Not a lot of draft capital this year, but you do have a first next year, 2 seconds, third and a fourth, and then all your picks in 2024. So overall, looking at this team, what are your thoughts and how are you proceeding?
Yeah, I mean, like you're absolutely loaded and top in town. I mean, let's just talk about your starting lineup. He doesn't say how many people are in his starting lineup, but let's just say a standard quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end, and we'll say 2 flexes, right? Josh Allen's your quarterback one. Not locked and loaded. He's a quarterback one in Dynasty. Your 2 running backs and flex, at least one of them, is going to be Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins. Your wide receivers and at least one of the flexes are going to be Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Marquise Brown. The only concern there would be Higbee at tight end. And 210, like 10-man league, is it at all possible that maybe a McBride
McBride is definitely worth that pick if he falls to that point. If people are going to be, searching for running backs and taking, Zamir Whites and Brian Robinson's ahead of that 210,
James
then
Cook.
maybe you get a guy like Trey McBride to fall to you at that 210 pick. So that's probably where I'm looking with that pick. If not, if you're getting close to the season, again, we don't want to talk about filling out your starting lineup in May or April or whatever. But once you get close to the start of the season, you want to trade a young piece like the one guy that stands out to me on your roster that I might be shopping to go get a tight end would be Michael Carter. Before the NFL draft, if you want to try and shop Michael Carter with the expectation that they might add a running back in the draft, you might be able to get Noah Fant plus or Mike Gesicki plus or Cole Kmet plus or somebody like that. If you're looking for a tight end in that tier, if you want to go up and try and up tier even more so and maybe take Michael Carter in your 210 and go after like TJ Hawkinson, you might be able to go after somebody like that. Maybe you can't get away with that, but I'm kind of just spitballing here.
Yeah, or maybe, you can take Carter 210 in a future second and maybe see if that lands you in the Kittle area. Like, who knows?
It might. Yeah, it might. 2 seconds and Michael Carter might be enough to get you to George Kittle for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, you can look into that, venture into that. I mean,
the running back core would be what I would use because you got, an embarrassment of riches there. And Dillon and Carter would be the 2 that I would probably use to do that because they have the most value of the guys that you have. And Carter is the riskiest proposition of holding after the NFL draft. So if you wanted to sell him for, like we said, some of those tight ends in that middle tier would probably be what I'd be looking to do. But overall, you should be, in a well set up to try and compete this year regardless.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. Yeah, the next team's going to be from Michael here. And the main questions he has are, where should I go with my top picks early in the draft? And should I acquire a top tier quarterback? Well, I'll just quickly allude to your second question. Should you try to acquire a top tier quarterback? Absolutely. Can you attain one? That is yet to be seen.
Yeah, top tier quarterbacks are always hard to go after. It's they're gold in Dynasty, and you got a team that is well set up to compete. Again, the quickest way to tell if you're competing or rebuilding is look at your running back core. You have McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. You're competing. You don't really have a choice at that point in time. The one thing I would say is because you have a lot of future draft capital, I would gauge your market to see if you can punt this year and retool for next year and build yourself a much more sustainable team going forward. Because McCaffrey and Henry still have a pretty good amount of value, and there's a chance that a year from now they don't. So if you wanted to see what your league market is dictating, and maybe you can sell Christian McCaffrey for Antonio Gibson a 2023 first. Maybe you can sell Derrick Henry for a 2023 first by himself and try and retool that running back core in the 2023 class to be able to fill out your roster. But you do have a lot of draft capital this year. You could grab, a Kenneth Walker or something, or just continue to fill out your roster. But that was just my initial thoughts looking at the roster.
I mean, to be honest, apart from a steady quarterback too, this is a team that could compete, I think, personally, especially with the draft capital that you have this year, especially with the capital that you can accumulate next year. Realistically, if you want to take that next step, get a locked and loaded quarterback 2 on this team, do you think if you offered out a Carson Wentz and 103 that you can move up to a Ross or Stafford?
Maybe,
on
yeah,
this
and
team.
you might even get lucky at 103, and Malik Willis might fall to you at 103.
That
And
would
then
be a
you can just
perfect
add
scenario.
Malik Willis to
Yeah.
this core, and then you got Rodgers and Zach Wilson and Malik Willis, which
Yep.
I think is a perfectly fine core going forward. Yeah. There's a number of different directions you can go. You have a lot of flexibility here. What I would probably do is if you can get yourself another quarterback, and you don't really need one because you have 3 starters on your team, try and compete this year, maybe bite the bullet next year if McCaffrey and Henry take a big dip in value, and use your picks this year and your capital in next year's class to recoup your team and recoup that running back core. Because if you can win the championship this year, obviously,
Yeah.
it makes it all worth it.
I will say though, you mentioned maybe sit on the quarterback core. I think if you make that plan like, oh, I want to compete now, you have to go for that quarterback upgrade. You like Russell Wilson to me would be the perfect fit for this team if you can attain him. Again, if Willis is sitting on the board at 103, you just fucking take Willis because the value is screaming there. But let's just say most drafts you're going to see Hall and Willis go top 2. If that happens, like as much as I love this wide receiver class, like you got to find core. Like realistically, again, I don't like drafting for need. I don't like trading or in general, like doing anything based on need. But Russell Wilson wouldn't just be for need. Russell Wilson is going to be a legitimate top 10 quarterback this year, which you're going to need to supplement with Rodgers if you want to win that championship. So Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford type, obviously, if Malik isn't available, you can look after that type. Other than that, I mean, you're very, very well positioned in both a longevity standpoint with the draft capital you've accumulated, along with having some win now pieces, Rodgers, McCaffrey, Chase, Andrews. But yeah, I like the way you're structured here.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to go through all these trades, but I don't want to, spend 7, 8, 9 minutes on this team. But it looks like from just cursory looks, it looks like you were able to take advantage of a league market that maybe is more redraft focused, which is why I tend to lean towards the side of seeing what you can get for McCaffrey and Henry, just to see. Because if somebody's willing to give you 2 first-rounders for Christian McCaffrey, I'm probably going to take that and just punt this year. And in 2023, my team will be dominant. I'll have all these young pieces in their primes, young running backs coming into the league, and I should be well set up for, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, 4-year stretch of straight dominance in this league, as opposed to this year where you could win this year, but after this year, you might have to do another rebuilding year or 2 in between, even though you have a lot of draft capital. So that's pretty much my only thoughts on that, those rebuilding or those contending pieces, seeing what you can get for them.
For sure. So anything else we should say here? Should we move on to the next team then?
No, let's move on to the next team.
All right. So we got actually Sccby's team, a 10-team, 1 quarterback, half PPR league where he can start 9. So I'll give you a little prelude. He says he's been a middle to bottom team for the past few years, decided to tear it down at the beginning of the season and made trades 1 to 4 during last year's draft. 5 and 6 were made midseason. 7 and 8 have been this offseason. So, I mean, we'll look at the trades and then read the rest of the questions. So overall, what are your thoughts on these trades?
We'll go through again, please. I know you guys want us to review your trades, but 8 trades is a lot for us to review on one episode. So if you can try and limit how many trades you want us to review to like 3 or 4 max, because we don't want to be spending too much time on one person's video, because there's a lot of people that want to be on Dynasty Decisions. So we'll talk about these trades just quickly. So in the first trade in last year's draft, you give up the 104. You get the 103 this year in a 2023 first. It's just you fleece that guy. It's a perfect example of people taking advantage, or of you taking advantage of rookie fever last year and, parlaying that into more first round draft capital in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer. Like, who was even the 2021 104? Like, I can't even think off my head.
You probably would have had a good chance at Chase, Pitts, or
okay. So I mean, like either way, like it was still a really, really good piece. And unless somebody hit the absolute nuts and hit Chase or Pitts, like realistically, even if that was obviously in most leagues it didn't happen, but let's just say that was Lawrence. Like,
I don't think I think Lawrence was the consensus 101. I think he was.
But like, let's just say hypothetically, because obviously Lance, Pitts, and Chase ended up equating to this value or more. But like, unless you hit one of those 3 at the 104, like, I mean, to be fair, 104, you might have had a decent chance at it, but like, still, like, you had to have made that exact right pick. If you took an ETN, or if you took a Devontae Smith, or if you took, like Justin Fields, like those players didn't end up equating value, and that was arguably one of the best top end draft classes that we've seen in a while, with Chase being the wide receiver 1, Pitts being the wide receiver 1, Lance being the top 10 quarterback. Like, everything ended up going right in that draft, particularly, and you still made good value with the deal, despite not knowing that ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure. The second trade here, I mean, Joe Mixon obviously had a great year this year, and you sold him during the draft. So this one
Easy.
kind of hurts a
Easy
little
move.
bit at the time, but I still think the value in the long term probably plays itself out. Leonard Fournette for a second and a third. I think you probably lost that one given what Leonard Fournette did this year and what he's going to do going forward. James Robinson, the 305, 304 for the 104 this year. That's a great move.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, even if James Robinson doesn't tear his Achilles, I think you have a phenomenal trade there. 2023 second for Deshaun Watson. That is, I mean, you fleeced the dude. Like the guy clearly was so nervous about Deshaun Watson, had no idea what was going to happen, and you got a top 8 dynasty quarterback for nothing essentially.
Yeah, you got my 106 for the price of a 2023 second. Oh, cool. That 2023 second is such a deep class. Guess what? Give me fucking Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, exactly. Then you got these other trades. I'm probably not going to review these because they're kind of complex, and we didn't review the last guy's trade, so I want to be a little bit fair here. But overall, what else do we have here? Just thoughts on the rebuild? Any suggestions going forward? I think you're in a great position. You got some cornerstone pieces with Lamb, with Taylor, with Metcalf, with Watson, and some of the quarterback guys that you have there are still young as well. And then you have obviously a lot of draft capital this year, a lot of draft capital next year with 5 first-round picks and 3 seconds. Sorry. So you're in a great spot.
Yep, absolutely. And he mentions his plan, Hall 101, wide receiver heavy, rest of the draft. Yeah, I absolutely agree. This is going to be a very, very good team very, very soon. As soon as you're able to, build out that RB core, build out the wide receiver core, and you have a ton of draft capital to be able to do it. So, I fully love what you've been able to do here. Let's move on to the next team because we're running a little bit low on time, but we'll try to, accommodate you guys as much as possible. We got BongDongSilver's team, 10 team, half PPR, 1 quarterback league with a 2 flex spots. So he details here specifically non-super flex. So main quarterback, Kyler, running backs, Chubb, Barkley, Akers, running backs, ARSB, McLaurin, Galladay, etc. And tight end, he has Pitts, along with the 103, 203, 206, etc. for picks this year. So overall, when looking at this team, what are your main thoughts here?
Yeah, he basically details he feels like his running backs are pretty deep. I agree. But he also thinks a few of these guys are very volatile. Akers, Penny, Singletary, and even Stevenson a bit. He basically says all didn't come on until later in the year, and for some, the year ended before I got a good feel of whether or not they are legit or flashes in the pan. He also says, given that he has a weak wide receiver core, which is what I'd agree as well, you just have really Amon-Ra St. Brown and McLaurin that are worth much of anything. He's been trying to figure out possible moves to make to land a quality wide receiver or 2. I would say that you're going to get a quality wide receiver or 2 at 103 and 203 in this year's draft, and you should be able to fill out your wide receiver core that way. But if you wanted to make a move, he's been trying to shop around Melvin Gordon and seeing what he can get for him because he hasn't signed yet. But he's also afraid that if he trades a guy like Akers or Penny and they end up being legit, then it's a huge waste. But what I'd be doing if you're looking to acquire a veteran wide receiver, and again, I don't think you need to. I think at 103, 203, and 206, you can get only wide receivers with those picks. This draft class is strong at wide receiver. You should be able to get, let's say, Treylon Burks at 103. At 203, you get David Bell or George Pickens or somebody, whatever guy that you value in that area. And then at 206, you might still be able to get a solid wide receiver prospect like, Justin Ross or even, a high draft capital like John Mechie or something at the very worst case scenario. And you could fill out your wide receiver core that way. But if you did want to make a trade, what I'd be probably looking to do is package 2 of your running backs together. I'd probably be looking to package like Penny and Singletary or Penny and Gordon and see if you can go out and acquire a young wide receiver with some upside or a veteran wide receiver that can give you a good, production baseline. If you can trade Rashad Penny and Melvin Gordon and maybe you have to throw a pick in like the 303 and get Michael Thomas, then you're in a good spot.
Yeah, or the one that's glaring to me is Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb is also a guy that we're actively selling as well. So
especially in a more casual league, if you can net a haul of either picks or a veteran wide receiver and a pick or whatever. I mean, Chubb has a ton of relative value in more casual leagues because of his standing in real life. People know, okay, this is one of the best in real life running backs. It should be netting me fantasy points. Well, guess what? It doesn't really net you a lot of fantasy points, might I add. But if you can move him for, top
Pittman,
10 level
Marcus
value, which is, I mean, like he has top 10 level value for a lot of players. So some players might have him as like their RB7, RB8 in Dynasty. If you can move him,
you might be able to get, Chubb in the 303 for Deontay Johnson or something like that. Yeah. And like you might be able to steal away a stud wide receiver like that or DJ Moore or, somebody in that, range, maybe Godwin or Diggs or something if they have a, a younger team or something. So you have a lot of options here. He says he's planning on taking Drake London at 103. Or best of wide receiver available based on landing spot. That is exactly what I would do because Drake London is my wide receiver 1. And if Burks goes to the Packers or something like that, then I would probably take Burks over him. But for the most part, Drake London will likely be my 103 post draft as well. So I think you're well set up. I think you kind of know what you're doing going forward. But I would, like Danny said, see what you can get for Chubb, see what kind of wide receiver value you can get there. And if you can't get good wide receiver value there, see if you can package 2 of your like hopeful running backs and maybe upgrade at wide receiver as well.
Yep. No, I fully agree with that assessment. I know I say fully agree a lot, but I mean, that was a very, very well conducted assessment. But either way, we can go on to the next team. That's going to be from GusBuster. And he basically just outlines a recent startup he's been in, a 12-team Superflex tight end premium startup. Just finished this drafting this team. He kind of wanted to know our thoughts. And he says here, tried out going 0 RB and didn't draft my first running back until round 8. What are your thoughts? Looking at this
is
team,
a Danny team if I've ever seen one.
This is beautiful. This is such a beautiful team. I mean, you have all your picks in 2023 and 2024. You built out that wide receiver core. You're talking CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Elijah Moore, Marquise Brown, Jameson Williams, Sky Moore. Like, I can see
like
myself
literally Danny
team.
would draft this team. Like everybody that he loves, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Elijah Moore, Marquise Brown, Jameson Williams, like all these dudes is exactly who Danny would draft. It's actually hilarious.
And the fact is too, like for going 0 RB, like Fournette's going to be a top 15 running back this year. Hunt's going to give you some quality RB2.
Gordon and Mostert have some upside depending on how they do too. So yeah, I do think you like Fournette should be an anchor for you. He should be good enough this year from a redraft perspective to be an anchor running back for you. And I think you can supplement RB2 production between the other 3 guys. And obviously your flex spots are going to be occupied by wide receivers for the most part. And it's a tight end premium. You got Mark Andrews. As well. So, and I actually really like what you did with the rookie quarterbacks too. I've seen a lot of people do this. When you do a startup draft with rookie QBs, take a shot on both, like 2 rookie quarterbacks, like Sam Howell and Ritter as your quarterback 3, or Sam Howell and, Corral as your quarterback 3. And then you can piece together a quarterback 3 behind Burrow and Wilson, who I think are pretty locked and loaded top 15 guys.
For sure. And he mentions, where do I go from here? Like looking at this team, you accumulated a ton of value. Like if you notice,
and next year you can add running backs in next year's class, which will be a better and more strong running back class. So if you pick, 100%. Let's say you're playing with house money this year and you fall short of the playoffs, so you get bounced in the first round and you're picking 108, 109 next year, and you can get a Sean Tucker or something like that, then you should be in a good position to compete like for real in 2023 once, Wilson's up to speed and maybe your rookie quarterbacks are full on starters as well. And some of your wide receivers are in their primes.
100%. I just want to quickly say too, appreciate you for listening to our advice, because I mean this is clearly
like if you told me Danny drafted this team, I would totally think that he did.
100%. But either way, enjoyed this episode. Enjoyed going through all of your teams. If you made it this far and you've enjoyed, as always, hit that like button, helps us grow, and subscribe to the channel. We're currently at about 9650, I believe, last time I checked. So give or take around there. So if you haven't already subscribed and you've been watching us for a while, just hit that damn button. It helps us a lot.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate all of you guys that are subscribed. If you guys are subscribed and you watch all of our videos, make sure the second you open a video of ours, you hit the like button immediately. Comment anything down below. Like if you have nothing to comment the word anything. It helps us in the YouTube algorithm. Ask us a question. Just say you enjoyed the video. Doesn't matter. It'll help us regardless. So if you have nothing to comment, we appreciate if you just comment anything if you need to.
For sure. Comment anything. But either way, appreciate you guys. Enjoy your day.